All right, diving into some seriously cool stuff today, folks. Ancient Egyptian wisdom, You've sent in selections from The Opening of the Way, Isha Schwaller de Lubicz, and wow, this book, it's a ride. We're going to unpack their whole concept of the soul, and let me tell you, it's not just some simple, ethereal thing. It's way more intricate than that.
What's wild is how this ancient perspective, right, it still resonates even thousands of years later. Like,
Well,
think about those times you feel stuck, just going through the motions. That's where this idea of the automaton comes in.
okay, yeah, the automated, let's break that down. It's that autopilot feeling, yeah. But instead of just like driving routes, it's our whole lives.
Exactly. That's it. The book argues that most of us, more often than not, we're ruled by this. Automaton habits, reactive emotions, those thought patterns we just can't shake.
Like puppets almost, right? And the automaton's got the strings, making us react the same way every time. No wonder we feel stuck.
Precisely. And the thing is, the ancient Egyptians, they recognized this internal struggle like way back then. They didn't just see the problem. They offered solutions, ways to break free from this automatic existence and step into our true potential. It's fascinating.
And here's where it gets even more interesting, right? Because the book introduces these two witnesses, almost like two internal GPS systems, but they're taking us in different paths.
Yes. Schwaller de Lubicz, he calls them the permanent witness, which is basically our personal consciousness, shaped by experiences, and the spiritual witness, which is like that spark of the divine within us, the Ka.
So hold on, the permanent witness, it's like trying to navigate life with an outdated map then.
In a way, yeah. And that's where the spiritual witness steps in, right? It's like having that real-time GPS guiding you toward, well, a more expansive version of yourself, a path aligned with, something bigger, even if it means going off-road a bit.
Okay, I'm hooked already. But we've got these two witnesses, then there's this whole duel going on inside us too. What's that about?
The duel is this constant back and forth, right, between our personal will, often driven by the ego, that desire for control, security, and the will to the light, which is the whisper of the spiritual witness guiding us toward growth, something beyond just ourselves.
Like that classic crossroads, you see it in myths, those stories. One path is comfy, familiar, the other, who knows, but it promises something more, even if it's a little scary.
Exactly, you got it. And the ancient Egyptians, they seem to understand that true liberation, it's not about denying the part of us that wants comfort, wants safety. It's about seeing it clearly, mastering it, and then using it as fuel for our spiritual growth.
This is where I think a lot of those, spiritual teachings, they get it wrong. It's not about pretending those messier parts of us don't exist. It's about owning them and then choosing a different path. But before we get too far, let's go back to the soul for a sec. The Egyptians, they didn't just stop at those two witnesses, did they? They break it down even more, right?
Oh, you're right. They went deeper, much deeper. Forget that single soul idea. They envisioned this whole cast of characters. They had the Ba, which is that transcendent spark, the part of us that connects to something bigger. Way bigger, like a thread going all the way back to the source of everything.
So that feeling we get, that deep down interconnectedness, even if we can't explain it, that's the Ba.
Exactly. But it's their take on the Ka, the spiritual witness, that I find really interesting. They thought the Ka had layers to it, each one representing a different part of us, almost like those Russian nesting dolls.
Okay, I like that, the nesting dolls. So if the Ka is like a nesting doll, what are those different layers?
Okay, so picture this, right? The outermost doll, the
Right.
one you see every day, it's the inferior Ka. The part shaped by, everyday stuff, desires, fears, all those automatic reactions we were talking about.
So that's the Ka that's like, give me that extra slice of cake, even when, deep down it's not the best idea. Exactly. It's driven by that automaton, wants that instant gratification, that comfort, Now, you open that doll up and boom, there's the intermediate cat, your permanent witness. This one, it's more aware, learning as it goes, trying to make choices that line up with your values, even if it still messes up sometimes.
The part of us that knows we should be eating our veggies, but hey, that dessert sure is tempting.
Exactly. We're all a work in progress, right? And then finally, way down deep, at the very heart of that nesting doll, you've got this tiny little doll. That one, that's the divine Capricorn, a spiritual witness, always nudging us toward, the good stuff, our best selves, the light. Okay, so there's like this whole hierarchy within the spectrum of Ka, and each one's got its own thing going on. And this is where I feel like things could get, I don't know, misinterpreted maybe. Because the book, it doesn't shy away from the not so pretty parts of us either, right? There's those animal Kas too. It's not all just meditation and Om chant.
Not at all. That's what's so cool about this ancient wisdom. It gets real. They understood, We're complex, and part of that is our primal instincts, those biological drives that keep us going hunger, the whole wanting to reproduce thing, even that fight or flight response when we feel threatened.
So those animal cause, they're like the base layer, the foundation. We can't just like wish them away.
Exactly. And the Egyptians weren't saying we should, not at all. It's more about recognizing them for what they are.
Hmm.
Not good, not bad, just part of the whole shebang of being human. You know what I mean?
It's like that Carl Jung quote. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So, if we're not supposed to be pushing these darker parts down, how do we work with them?
That's where the book gets practical. And it all starts with awareness, really. Schwaller de Lubicz, he's big on watchfulness.
See, when I hear watchfulness, I'm thinking like meditation, mindfulness, that kind of thing. But it sounds like we're talking about something way deeper.
Oh, yeah, it's way more than just noticing your thoughts. It's about this deep conscious awareness of everything going on inside your thoughts, emotions, what your body's feeling, even those subtle little impulses from those animal cause. Like you're catching yourself in the act of being the automaton before you react in that old familiar way.
Becoming scientists of our inner world almost, observing everything without, like, judging it.
Exactly. And along with that awareness, the book's big on meditation, but not just any meditation. Schwaller de Lubicz is talking about a practice that helps you find stillness inside, but not by emptying your mind, by focusing on your spiritual heart.
The spiritual heart, it sounds kind of metaphorical, but I'm guessing the ancient Egyptians, they weren't messing around. They thought about this literally, huh?
Oh, they did, absolutely. For them, the spiritual heart wasn't just a physical organ. It was the source of intuition, wisdom, compassion, the whole package. That quiet place inside where the spiritual witness, that divine Ka, can finally get a word in edgewise.
Like, we got to create space for that inner wisdom to come through, and that takes effort. And the book, it doesn't pretend this is easy, does it? It even says we need to confront our shadows. That's where I think a lot of people get tripped up, right? It's so much easier to just focus on the positive stuff.
Oh, it's tempting, isn't it? Staying in our comfort zones. But Schwaller de Lubicz, he's adamant that true liberation, breaking free from the automaton for good, it means getting real about who we are at our core, even those parts we'd rather keep hidden away. He says those shadow parts, the ones we try to ignore, they can hold us back from truly knowing ourselves. It is, though, isn't it? It's like that saying, the unexamined life, not worth living. But how do we actually confront those shadows, without getting totally lost in them?
It's like those scary things in fairy tales, right? They're way less scary once you get to know them. But still, facing those parts of ourselves, that takes guts.
It does, for sure. And I think that's what the ancient Egyptians, they were onto something, this whole self-transformation thing, aligning with the spiritual witness. It's not passive. You need courage, you got to be dedicated, and maybe most importantly,
Compassion?
compassion for ourselves, yeah, and for everyone else who's, fighting their own internal duels. But you know what I find really interesting? How this ancient text, it totally redefines what it means to be elite. It's not about like status or how many followers you have, right?
No way. Schwaller de Lubicz, he flips the script. He says, true elite, it's not about your job, your money, or even how smart you are.
So we're talking about like an inner elite. What's that even look like now in the
Yeah.
real world? Imagine if, right, real leadership, it wasn't about what you'd accomplished, but about who you were. Deep down empathy, being truly generous, taking responsibility for what you do, keeping things simple, and not just buying into every belief system that comes along.
Those are qualities, man. We could all use more of that, elite or not, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of refreshing to hear, actually, especially these days when it seems like everyone's so focused on, what other people think.
I hear you. It really is. And the thing that gets me is how this ancient perspective, it makes us rethink what it means to be successful. What if real fulfillment, real power, it doesn't come from achievements, but from aligning ourselves with those inner qualities, with the guidance of that spiritual witness?
That's a big idea, especially in a world that's all about competition and, needing that pat on the back. But with all this talk about spiritual stuff, inner transformation, there's one thing that keeps coming back to me, is simplicity. It's like a paradox almost. This whole complex system of the soul, but then this constant reminder to be more like, well, like kids again.
That's a really good point, and it gets to the heart of what the opening of the way is all about. Schwaller de Lubicz, he's big on approaching this whole thing with humility, letting go of needing to figure it all out with just our brains.
So less about like knowing more stuff and more about just being open to, the wisdom that's already there inside us. Almost like we already have the answers. We just got to clear out some of the mental clutter.
Exactly. Sometimes the answers, they're right in front of us. We just don't see them. And that's on us. Our own overthinking, that need to analyze everything to death, it can block the truth.
Makes you wonder, what if the key to this whole, unlocking our full potential, living a good life, what if it's not about becoming someone better, but about remembering who we already are deep down? Those intuitive, compassionate people we were before the world got a hold of us.
Now, that's beautifully put. And maybe that's the most important thing we can take from this whole deep dive into how the ancient Egyptians saw the soul. Real wisdom, it's often simple.
Yeah.
It's that childlike awe and wonder about life. It's trusting that inner compass, that spiritual witness, the one that's always trying to guide us back home to ourselves.
And that, I think, is a great place to leave it. If this whole thing's got you curious to learn more, definitely check out The Opening of the Way by Isha Schwaller de Lubicz. And remember, this journey, it's not about becoming someone new, it's about rediscovering who you already are. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and keep diving deep.